You can learn a lot from a picture of what not to do, right? Oh, we got this flipped around, Matthew. We are beginning a brand new series this morning, and it's called Bad Examples. And we are taking a month to look at some really bad examples. In fact, the worst relationship examples that we can find in the Bible. And really, when we look at these examples, these are examples of things that we just that you do not want. These are things we do not want to emulate in our lives. And so we're gonna take this time. And we're gonna look at these, and I'm gonna dare you to do a couple things. I'm gonna dare you first of all to not look away as we look at these pictures, because even if they begin to look a little bit too familiar, so don't look away. And the other thing is to not forget what we learned, because as we look at these examples of some really bad families, we want to make sure that we are not that our relationships look nothing like them. So, Matt, are you working on this? There's no the monitor's off. Is not correct. What was I saying? Before I get there, let me take a minute to look into the camera, and while we work on this, just to say welcome to all of you who are watching with us online. I know that not everyone can get here physically, and I know a lot of people like to kind of check it out before you visit us in person. So we're just glad. Thank you for joining us today. I'm glad that you chose to be here today, and that we are having an opportunity to all be together. I'm so glad that you all chose to be here today. You know, you can do anything with us Sunday morning, especially a Super Bowl Sunday, and you are here. So I'm so glad that you have chosen to be here today. You know what you can't choose, right, is you can't choose your family. And it would be cool, though, if you could, right? Imagine if you could choose your family. Imagine like dodgeball, right? Like high school dodgeball, like you're able to just kind of like set that up and just choose. I think you're all probably thinking of people who wouldn't have made your team, right? On your family. I imagine you might not have made their team, but that's fine. You know, you can't pick your family, though. You can choose your friends, you can choose your spouse, you can choose your church. Not if you're my kids, but everyone else can choose their church. All right, you can walk away from a bad boss, you can fire a bad employee, but you can't choose your family, right? Unless you're God. Right? God, he chose his family. Actually, he chose this one family, and he said he chose this family as his own. And I got to say, in my opinion, it was a really bad pick. Like the family that he chose as his first pick was like not even worthy of being the last pick. Like, this is the worst family ever. This is what we're going to look at today, is the worst family of all time. Like, I know you can think of some families like that maybe that are on TV. You're thinking those are some really bad families. Maybe some of you even want to maybe throw your family into the running. I don't know. But they're telling you, this is the worst family of all time. If Tom Brady is the GOAT, yeah, you got people into that today? Yeah, this family is the woat, okay? They are the worst of all time. But here's what's wild about this. God chose the worst family of all time to do the greatest thing for the world. He saved the world through the worst family he could find. The family I'm talking about is Jacob's family, and his story is found in the book of Genesis, chapters 25 through 50. So I hope you're comfortable, okay? Because we're just going to cover Genesis 25 through 50. Just kidding, it's a lot. I'm just going to skim over it, but I encourage you to look at it, to look into it, to study this so you can see this for yourselves. If you are under 13, you should have your parents' permission, though, first, because it can get pretty ugly. What we're going to do is we're going to look at this family, and we're going to look to learn what we can from this just really horrible example of what it is to be a family. And then what we're going to do is we're going to see how we can bring good, how we can bring out God's best in our family. Okay, so you with me? We're going to look at the worst family ever. We're going to see what we can learn about what not to do, and then we're going to learn what we can do to bring out God's best. So Genesis chapter 25 is where we start. Every tragic story always has a turning point. Right? There's always somewhere that you can look and say, here's where everything went wrong. Well, in Jacob's family, where everything went wrong, it was that moment that he was born, okay? Here is the story of Jacob. It says, when the time came for Rebekah, that's Jacob's mom, when it came time for her to give birth, there were twin boys in her womb. The first to come out was red, and his whole body was like a hairy garment. That's so beautiful. You know those moments when moms are like, isn't he beautiful? And it's not. So this was a red, hairy baby, and they named him Esau. I would have gone with maybe Ewok or Wookiee, but they went with Esau. But then after this, his brother came out with his hand grasping Esau's heel. He was probably stuck in the hair. But so he was named Jacob. Now you have a footnote in your Bible that says that word Jacob, it means he who grabs the heel, which was a Hebrew idiom, a Hebrew expression for he deceives. This is what Jacob means. He deceives. Now, that's probably not a good idea, right? To name your son liar, right? But this is what these parents did. And maybe this is lesson number one when it comes to family, right? Like even if you don't name your son, rotten cheater or something like that, right? Like even if you don't do that, the truth is that the names that we call our kids, especially when we're frustrated or we're angry, the things that we say when we feel bad about ourselves, they're like labels. And you know the thing about labels, when you label something, labels stick. And sometimes even when you try to get the label off and you rip it off, it's still left there. And some of you know what I'm talking about because there may be some of you who are still trying to get rid of the label of something that was said to you when you were young. So maybe that's the first thing that words matter. But anyway, he is born and he is called Jacob. And Jacob we can kind of see that Jacob doesn't have a great relationship with his father. There's just two of them and he's not the favorite. In fact, it's Isaac loved Esau, but Rebekah loved Jacob. So the parents had favorites, super healthy context to grow up in. The father's favorite was Esau and the mother's favorite was Jacob. Jacob also did not have a good relationship with his brother, which was kind of Jacob's fault. Jacob kind of had a habit of screwing over his brother, as it were. For example, one time he kind of conned him out of, he took advantage of Esau's vulnerability, and he got his birthright from him. Esau sold his birthright to him for some soup. During the 21-day fast, I would totally have understood that. But, now it seems silly. But anyway, he sold the birthright, which that was a big deal. That meant he got double the inheritance because the firstborn got double the inheritance of the secondborn. So he switched that out. That was something he regretted later. But that wasn't enough. Jacob also conned his brother, like absolutely schemed his brother out of his father's deathbed blessing. That was a huge deal because that wasn't just money. That was granting him authority. That was the family legacy now follows you. What's interesting about that con is that his mom was involved. Jacob and his mom together schemed against Esau, so against her other son, and they deceived their father, Isaac, their blind, bedridden father, Isaac. This is the family God chose. So they scam Esau out of this bedside blessing. And here's what Esau, we read, this is not surprising. Esau held a grudge, you think, against Jacob because of the blessing his father had given him. And so he said to himself, the days of mourning my father are near, like my dad's almost dead. Then I will kill my brother Jacob. Like Esau is going for a double funeral, right? Which, I mean, he lost a ton of money on that inheritance thing, so he's got to save up. So he's like, as soon as my dad dies, I'm going to kill my brother. Well, Mama hears about this, and so she gets Jacob, and she sends Jacob away for safety to his uncle Laban. Okay, so if we think of like our family experience, right? If you think of your family story, there's kind of 3 chapters, right? There's the family you grew up in. There's the season when you make your family, right? And then there's the stuff that your kids do. That's kind of like the 3 chapters of your family. So chapter 1 of Jacob's family, the family he grew up in, he's got quite a list. So he was tagged a deceiver early in life. He doesn't have his dad's love. He's got an unhealthy relationship with his mom. He has a broken relationship with his brother, and he runs away from home. I don't know if any of this is ringing a bell, but this is Jacob's family. Now check this out. So Jacob is on the way to his uncle. And as he's on this journey, he has this incredible, unmistakable encounter with God. We're told that God spoke to Jacob and he said this. He said, I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham and Isaac. He said, I will give you and your descendants the land on which you are lying. He was telling him, Jacob, look, I know the family that you grew up in. I know what your experiences are. I know that you're on the run right now. But I want you to know something, Jacob. I am God. I see you. I know you. And I have a plan for you and your family. And he says to Jacob, he says, your descendants will be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the west and the east and the north and the south. And all peoples on earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. He was saying, Jacob, I know you're like a man without a country right now. I know everyone's against you, but I want you to understand something. That I have a purpose for you and for your whole family. I've got a mission for you, that I'm choosing your family to save the world. And he says, Jacob, I am with you and I will watch over you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. Check this out. He tells Jacob, look, I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. So Jacob, I'm not going to give up on you. I know what your story is. I want you to know I'm going to do this and I'm not going to give up on you. Isn't that awesome? Can you imagine that? God reveals his vision for Jacob's family. Jacob saw his family one way, but God reveals to him, here's my vision of your family. I mean, life-changing, right? No, actually, not at all. Sometimes, people encounter God and then they get up and they're completely unchanged. Well, that seems to be Jacob's story right here and now. Because he goes on to Laban and he meets his uncle Laban, and his uncle Laban, he is also a dirty, rotten scoundrel. And these 2 guys, they are just made for each other. And so he starts to work for his uncle, and his uncle says, hey, let's make a deal here. And Jacob says, okay, here's the deal. I'll work for 7 years, and then you give me one of your daughters to be my wife. I know that makes them cousins, but this is like a whole different time, different generation. Let's just get past all that, okay? So let's just get past that part, right? So he says, look, I will give you one of my daughters as a wife. You work for me for 7 years. So that's great. He's got 2 wives. Jacob has a choice. I'm just reading from the Bible here, okay? Leah had weak eyes, but Rachel had a lovely figure and was beautiful. So like, one was cross-eyed, the other one had a lovely figure and was beautiful, all right? So This is going to shock you. The choice that Jacob makes is just going to shock you right here. Ready? Jacob was in love with Rachel and said, I'll work for you 7 years in return for your younger daughter. I just want to put something down, younger daughter, Rachel. So Rachel gets the rose, right? No surprise there. But Jacob wasn't the only one with tricks. So again, this is in the Bible. It's 7 years later, and it's now the night when Jacob's going to consummate this agreement. And we don't know, but this maybe, it's dark out. Maybe it was cloudy. There's no stars. There's no lights in the tent. Maybe the new bride was veiled up. Maybe the new groom was liquored up. We don't know exactly how this happened, but as the story goes, Laban sneaks Leah into that tent. And this is straight from the Bible. When the morning came, there was Leah. So Jacob said to Laban, what is this you have done to me? I served you for Rachel, didn't I? Why have you deceived me? And Laban says, hey man, that's your problem. That's our custom. We marry off the older one first. Leah's the older one. That's how it works. And so Jacob says, all right. So a week later, finish your honeymoon. A week later, he now marries Rachel. And so now he has 2 wives, sister wives, literally. And they both come with, as a little bonus, they both come each with their own personal servant. And Jacob just has kids with them all, okay? And so all in all, Jacob has 12 sons and 1 daughter and 4 women. And if you're keeping score at home, it looks a little bit like this. So there's Jacob, and there are the women. And so at first, he has Reuben. This is his first boy. Proud of his first boy, Reuben. Reuben will sleep with Jacob's concubine. So that wasn't good. And then he has Simeon and Levi, and then Judah. Interesting story about Judah, we're told in the Bible, that Judah, he has sex with his daughter-in-law. But to his defense, he thought she was a prostitute. So it's in the Bible. So their marriage with Leah is loveless. They're loveless. He loves Rachel, but Rachel can't have kids. Leah's having the kids, and so Rachel can't have kids, and so Jacob's like, well, what's up, Bilhah? And so she has 2 kids, Dan and Naphtali, and then Zilpah, she has 2 kids, Gad and Asher. And then, as you can imagine, Leah and Rachel, they didn't really get along. This now kind of came in between their relationship as sisters. And so, you had on the one side, like, I'm having kids and you can't, haha. And the other one was, well, I was his first choice and you weren't, haha. And so they didn't really get along. Well, one day they're in an argument and Leah comes up to Rachel and he's like, you stole my husband. And Leah's like, that's your problem. And so, Rachel says that. And so Rachel says, I tell you what, you can hire him, right? Rachel's clearly in love with Jacob too. So you can hire him. I'll sell him to you. You can have him tonight for some of those plants that your son grows. Those are really something special. And so Leah, she's like, okay, I will sell you, son, give me some of those plants. I'll sell you those. And then she goes to Jacob and she says, I bought you for the plants. And so you got to be with me. And so Jacob's like, all right. And then they have Issachar. That's a meet cute. Issachar, tell us about how your parents got together, right? It's a cute story. And then they have 2 more, Zebulun, and then they have a daughter named Dinah. Finally, Rachel is able to give birth, and she gives birth to a son named Joseph. Meanwhile, while Jacob is not siring a football team, he is working a scam on the job. And so he is cheating his uncle Laban as he works there, and he's cheating him out of all kinds of wealth. He's working it so that all of his flock is stronger and all of Laban's flock is weaker, and he figures that Laban's catching up with him. And so what he does does, first of all, we learn this. We say, this is what the Bible tells us, that in this way the man grew exceedingly prosperous and came to own flocks and all those things. In other words, he got all this wealth dishonestly. So he takes off, and Laban gives chase, and Laban catches up to him, and he's like, I'm going to kill Jacob. But then God visits Laban and says, don't touch Jacob. And so Laban doesn't, but he says to Jacob, look, we're cool. We're going to let this go, but I'm going to draw a line in the sand here. And you don't cross this way, and we're fine, I don't kill you, and I won't go that way. And this is it, and we're done, and that's it. And so these family leave, and they're done. Okay, so if this is chapter 2, this making of the family for Jacob, this is what his record looks like. He's scammed and lied to buy family. He's got 2 marriages. The first wife is mistreated, kids with 4 women, sisters are divided over a man. He's got dishonestly gained wealth and more severed relationships. This is the family God chose to save the world. Now, Jacob is back on the journey, and he's headed home. He's on his way to face his brother now, Esau. And so he's terrified of what that's going to be like because of what he's done to Esau. The last time he saw him, he was just stealing from him. And so the night before he sees Esau face to face, Jacob has another amazing encounter with God. And in this encounter, God gives Jacob a brand new vision for who he is. And he does this by changing his name. Here's what happens. God says to Jacob, your name will no longer be Jacob. You see, God knew that, look, this guy is going to continually go on being the deceiver that he thinks he is. That's how he sees himself, and that's just how he's going to continue to be until I show him how I see him. Until he's able to see who he really is, he's going to continue in this cycle. So he says, look, you'll no longer be called Jacob, but you'll be called Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome. That name Israel, that's the Israel. Like they all came out of Jacob. Jacob's the OG, right? And then all of these descendants came out of Jacob. He said, listen, I want you to understand who you really are. Yeah, look, it's going to be a struggle. Yeah, life's not going to be easy, but you will overcome, because I haven't created you to be a schemer. I haven't created you to gain wealth dishonestly. I haven't created you to mistreat women and use your power and money for your own advantage. I haven't created you to be a liar and a cheater. I've created you to be an overcomer. This is who I see you as. This is who you are. This is the story that I'm writing into your life. So, this moment, Jacob gets up and he's changed. There's something that happens. He's not perfect, but there's something that happens in Jacob when he's able to see himself through God's eyes. So, he goes and he's reconciled with Esau. And he's crazy rich, and so he buys land for his family to settle in, and it's in a great spot. And they settle there, but it's all very short-lived because even though he's kind of changed, there's still consequences of all of it. What you seed, the seeds you plant, they grow. And so what happens is this: a prince from a nearby tribe rapes his daughter Dinah. And so immediately this prince regrets this, and he goes and he wants to marry her. And so he takes her into home to marry her, to make her a princess. The brothers, they learning from their father kind of how to scheme and deceive, they convince him that in the village that it's all good, and they come up with this whole elaborate plan to get revenge. And they don't just get revenge on this prince. They slaughter the entire tribe. They kill every man in the tribe. And now Jacob says, man, you have made us, you've ruined our reputation. We're now surrounded by tribes that are so much more powerful than us. And if they think we're a threat, they're going to destroy us. And so all of the family packs up again. They leave the land they bought, and again, they are on the journey. Now, while they're on the journey, Rachel, she finally gives birth to another son, Benjamin, Jacob's youngest son, but she dies in childbirth. That's the end of their kids. But their kids, these sons of Jacob, they have their own issues. In fact, here's what we read. We read that now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons because he had been born to him in his old age. And he made him an ornate robe for him. You know, the coat of many colors? That's it right there. And then when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him. They hated Joseph, and they could not speak a word to him. So even though Jacob knew that pain of favoritism, he repeated that cycle and chose this favorite, and the brothers hated them. And Joseph, honestly, he didn't really help himself. He was a tattler. And so he tattled on his brother. And there's another time when he told his brothers, hey, I had a dream, and it's where you all bow down to me. And then he told about another time where he told the whole family, hey, I got this other great dream where you guys were all bowing down to me. And that's when Jacob, the father, said to son, like, maybe don't say everything out loud. Not surprisingly, as soon as they had a chance, the brothers got Joseph alone, and they roughed him up, and they ultimately sold him to some slave traders that were traveling through. And then they took his fancy coat, and they covered it in blood, and they told the dad that a lion had killed him. Chapter 3 of Jacob's story is what his kids do. It looks like this: mass murder, sex with father's girlfriend, sex with daughter-in-law, thought was a prostitute, more favoritism and hatred, selling brother as a slave. They always say that the kids will go to the next level, right? I think every person, I hope if nothing else, every person can feel a little bit better about their own family right now, right? Like, I don't know what you thought about your family before you came in here today, but it ain't so bad. It ain't so bad. Maybe I would hope that you can't check all of these boxes, that your family isn't a complete mirror with Jacob's family. But maybe you can relate in some of these areas. Like, in all seriousness, maybe even as you came in here, as you hear, maybe you can relate to family members lying and betraying each other. Maybe you've got family members that just aren't talking to each other. They drew a line in the sand a long time ago and they're done. Maybe you can relate to feeling the hurt of favoritism, unforgiveness. Maybe there are broken marriages and all kinds of sexual immorality that has messed up things in your family. Maybe you've got skeletons in your closet, and maybe your family's just got a culture of sweeping things under the rug. Maybe there's a me-first culture that has pervaded the way that your family interacts with each other and with other people. Maybe your family's got a reputation that goes ahead of you. Maybe you're living out consequences of your family's sin. Maybe you're the one that has brought pain into your family. We could go on and on because we all have different stories. But the point is, no matter how great or how terrible we may think of our family, no family is perfect. And we could find plenty of do not do that lessons in Jacob's story, in Jacob's example. But I believe that there are three really important lessons, positive lessons, that we can learn through their story. Three very important lessons that are true for every single one of us. And here's number one: that you can be different from your family. You can be different from your family. See, Joseph was different from the rest of his family. Even after he was sold into slavery, like, he could have responded in so many different ways after that. But Jacob, he responded with an incredible integrity in every situation. Even when I don't mean Jacob, I mean Joseph. Even when Joseph was lied about, even when he was stabbed in the back, Joseph, he kept his integrity. His anchor was his relationship with God. And that connection with God led to a spiritual insight. It led to an unparalleled wisdom. God blessed everything that Joseph did. and people were drawn to him. By the end, Joseph becomes second in command over all of Egypt. He was different from the rest of his family. Now, I know that the pull, we all experience like that pull to be a product of our environment. It's the easiest thing to do, and people will even give us a pass on it. But we are all writing our own story. And listen, I know it's difficult, but when attitudes and behaviors and values of our family of origin contradict the attitudes and the behaviors and the values of Jesus, then it's on us to be different from our family. And it's not a lack of love to do what's right. It may cause tension. Jesus actually said that, look, there will be families that make it difficult to follow me. There'll be families that will want you to do what they say as opposed to what I call you to do. And Jesus said, look, the truth is that if you're going to be my follower, you're going to have to prioritize me. Maybe even over your own family. But he said, look, if it ever comes to that, I want you to understand that God sees that. And if you choose me, God will always honor you. Jesus said it this way. He said, I tell you, no one who has ever left home or brothers or sisters or mother or father or children or fields for me and the gospel will fail to receive 100 times as much in this present age. God will honor you. God will bless you in all that you do when you follow him, and people will be drawn to you. He will not leave you out in the cold. He said, homes and brothers and sisters and children and fields, along with persecutions. It won't be easy. I've created you to overcome, though. In this age and in the life you'll receive, in the age to come, you'll receive eternal life. Long story short, just like Joseph, God will bless you and he will draw people to you and you will receive eternal life. You can be different from your family. And here's why I want you to see why that's important. Here's why you should be. Because you can be different for your family. You see, Joseph's difference from his family, it wasn't just a rejection of his heritage. It wasn't a rejection of his family. Through Joseph's leadership, he literally saves all of Egypt as well as his family. He saves them from famine that would have otherwise wiped them out, and we're not even telling the story. As Joseph would later say to his brothers who they were bowing before him at the moment, actually, because they thought that he was going to deal with them in the way that their family culture had always dealt with people. They just assumed that his niceness, it was a scheme, it was a deception. And so they assumed that he was going to behave the way their family history always behaved. They expected him to take revenge on them for what they did. But here's what he said. He says, no, listen. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. So then don't be afraid. I will provide for you and for your children. And he assured them and spoke kindly to them. Joseph wasn't just different from his family. He was different for his family. His difference was for his family's good. You see, when God gave Jacob that new name, what he wanted him to see is that the most important thing that he could ever change for his family was himself. Jacob was a classic trying to control it all. He was always trying to come up with some scheme to make it all work. He was always trying to go under and around, trying to scheme something so he could control it and make it all okay. And what God wanted him to see, like, the most important thing you can do for yourself, Jacob, is to see yourself the way I see you. The most important thing, and I'm saying this, I believe God's saying this to us today, the most important thing that you can do for your family is to change yourself, to see yourself the way God sees you. Yeah, there was much about Jacob's past, that in the family's past, that he couldn't change. But there was a lot of his story yet to be written. And that's true for you, and it's true for me. When you and I choose to surrender to God, when we choose to really surrender our attitudes and our behaviors and our values to the lead of Jesus, that's when we are bringing good into our family. You can change, you can be different for your family. And here's why to do that. Because you can be a different kind of family. What's so amazing about this terrible picture of family that we're given is that God chose them to save the whole world. See, watch this. It was through Jacob's family line, and specifically, it was through Jacob's family line through Judah, right? Judah's mom was Leah. That was the one that Jacob didn't want, right? And he mistreated. Through Judah, and remember, Judah was the one who had that little thing, with his daughter-in-law. Well, that thing with his daughter-in-law produced a child named Perez. It was specifically through Jacob, through Judah, through Perez, that thousands of years later, Perez has a direct descendant named Mary, to whom the angel said, "You will come and conceive and give birth to a son, and you were to call him Jesus. He will be great and will be called the Son of the Most High. The Lord God will give him the throne of his father David, and he will reign over Jacob's descendants forever. His kingdom will never end." God chose this family. He redeemed the ugliest story of them all in order to save the whole world. Understand, there is no story that our lives can tell that God cannot redeem and use to save lives. That he cannot redeem and use to tell a story that brings glory to him and good to the world. He brought Jesus through this story. Jesus would come and he would live unlike his earthly family. He'd come and live unlike any other earthly ancestor he ever had. He would come and he would live sinlessly, and he would die unjustly to pay for the messes of all of mankind. And he would be raised from the dead, and it's through him that we have hope. It's through him that we have hope of forgiveness. It's through him that we have hope that even our worst story can be redeemed. It's through him that we have hope of healing and of freedom to write a different story for our lives. It's through him that we have hope that our families can be a different kind of family. I mean, that ugly story of Jacob's family, it's really a beautiful story of God's redemptive intention for every family on earth. He wants to make miracles out of your messes. You can be a different kind of family. How can you do this? I'm going to end really quickly. I'm going to give you 3 quick steps that you can take to create a different kind of family. The first one is this: to forgive your family. No family's perfect. Forgiveness is necessary in every family. Unforgiveness is a trap. You're the only one in it. Unforgiveness is just keeping you chained to some event that can't be changed. And only you can free yourself by letting it go. Paul said this. He said, "Get rid of all bitterness and rage and anger, brawling and slander, along with every form of malice. Get rid of it. Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other just as in Christ God forgave you." God just didn't forgive you for your bad actions. God forgave you for being a person who does bad things. He forgives us, the person. Until you can forgive the people for being imperfect, you'll never be able to get past their imperfections. Joseph had to break the cycle in his family. He had to forgive rather than taking revenge, rather than holding grudges. Not just for what they did, but also for what they intended. And that might be your first step. You can't choose your family, but you can choose to forgive your family. Number 2 is this: honor your family. Paul writes, "Love one another with a brotherly affection. Outdo one another in showing honor." Look, if the Godfather teaches us anything, it doesn't do any good to take sides against the family, right? It doesn't do any good to criticize your family. It doesn't do any good to put them down and to dishonor them. Rather, bring honor to your family, and you can do that in 3 ways. Pray good for them. Speak well of them. And do good for them. Speaking, praying, and doing. I didn't say feel good. Make the choice to pray good, speak good, do good. You will make your family better when you add the culture of honor to your family. Even if you've got a great family, You can make it better by adding a culture of honor, speaking good, praying good, doing good for one another. Lastly, lead your family. No matter where you'd rank your family from best to worst, no matter where you rank in your family, no matter how old you are, what your gender is, no matter how you got into this crazy family, no matter who's supposed to be the spiritual leader in your family, no matter how much spiritual support you have from others in your family, it is the call of every individual who's a part of a family to take the lead and set the example for your family. Paul writes this. He said, don't let anyone look down on you because you're young, but set an example for the believers in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity. We're always to be people who are looking to set an example, not blaming our behavior on an example that was set for us, but setting a behavior, saying, hey, follow me as I follow Christ. It's up to each of us to be the family we want to be a part of. This is God's redemptive intention for you and for your family. God wants to make miracles out of your messes. And he wants to use you to do that. He wants to use me to do that. This is the gospel. I really believe that God chose Jacob's family of all the families he could have chose. I believe he chose Jacob's family because he wants you and me to know that there is no mess too big. There's no person who's too far gone. There's no one that's beyond his love and his forgiveness. He still wants to work miracles in your life. He wants to work miracles in your family through your life. Would you bow with me in prayer? The Bible tells us that God has created each and every one of us to be his children, to know him, to follow his lead. God has created each of us to see ourselves the way he sees us, as people with purpose, people he loves, who he has made. But by our own choice, we go our own way instead. And when we do that, we break that relationship with God. The good news that the Bible tells is that Jesus came to fix that relationship, to reconcile you and God, to make you right with him, to make you his child again, to restore you to the life of purpose that he created you to have. And he did all the work. He came to earth and he lived sinlessly because we couldn't. And he died unjustly on our behalf. And he was raised from the dead to prove that he can defeat sin and death. And his invitation is simple. It's not about joining a religion or joining a church. It's about responding to him. He wants you to have a new kind of relationship with God. And if you will put your trust in him, you'll invite him to be the leader of your life. He will forgive you. He will give you his spirit, and he will lead you to that life of purpose that he has for you. He will use you to transform your family. If you want to do that, you want to have that relationship with God, you want to be right with him, I want to give you an opportunity today, and you don't have to stand up or come forward or anything like that. You can respond right in your seat. I just want to pray with every person here who would say, I want to be right with God, and I'm ready to put my trust in Jesus. Every person would say, I want the life that God has for me, and I'm ready to trust Jesus to bring me there. If that's you, everyone heads bowed and every eyes closed, would you just raise your hand so I could pray for you? Yes. Anyone else? Yes. You can put your hands down. I'm going to pray. I'm going to invite everyone to just pray along with me. If you raised your hand today, or if you were a follower of Jesus, would you just pray with me? Jesus, thank you for your love for me. Thank you for dying on the cross and raising from the dead. I believe in you. Put my trust in you to make me right with God, to bring me into God's family. Forgive my sin and lead me to the life of purpose you have for me. Help me to see myself as you see me. Not in terms of my sin, not in terms of my failures, but in terms of the purpose that you have for me. Thank you for your love for me. I invite you into my life.